former Trump campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos. Remember him? He was finally sentenced yesterday. What did he get? 14 days in prison for lying to the FBI. He's the first former campaign aide to be sentenced in Robert Mueller's Russia probe, but the judge in the case said he didn't believe Papadopoulos lied to help Russia.
So where does the probe go from here? Alan Dershowitz is a Harvard law professor emeritus and author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, and he joins us right now.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Ed, you want to
I thought that, George Papadopoulos was the key to this whole case. At least that's what we first heard. And we don't want to minimize the fact that he lied to the FBI. You should tell the truth to the FBI. We've talked about this with General Flynn and others. But, Professor, a lot of people were claiming months ago that this was going to somehow prove Russian collusion.
Well, it certainly hasn't done that. And I think it reflects what a lot of judges feel, that the law today that permits people to be prosecuted for lying without taking an oath is very dangerous to all Americans. There should be a law that says you can't be prosecuted for lying unless you've put your hand in the air on a Bible and said you swear to tell the truth. The FBI finds it so easy, and the prosecutors find it so easy to just approach somebody, talk to them on the street, ask them a question, get them to tell something which is then contradicted, and suddenly they've committed a felony. So there's a lot of feeling that there's a difference between lying under oath to Congress, lying under oath in front of the grand jury, or telling a fib to somebody who's talking to you, whether an FBI agent or a prosecutor. So I suspect the sentence reflects that. The sentence also reflects the fact that the alleged lie or the lie was not particularly material to the investigation. The claim is it prevented them from interviewing a witness which they might otherwise have been allowed to interview. But the judge, obviously, by his sentence, indicated that he wasn't impressed with that argument, and that's why we have judges. Prosecutors shouldn't be the ones that determine, in the end, the truth or the extent of the truth or the sanction for telling an untruth.
But, Professor, we're a long way from when he originally pleaded guilty, and everyone thought this was the beginning of the end, the Russia investigation. The walls are closing in, as we've heard time and time again. This is how the media framed the original guilty plea. Listen.
Guilty plea from a former Trump campaign advisor named George Papadopoulos. An even bigger bombshell, this time pointing directly to the question of collusion.
How is it not collusion when George Papadopoulos is in contact with various people who are promising dirt on Hillary Clinton?
Papadopoulos information has the one key word that should frighten everybody in the White House, and that key word is guilty.
Jim Acosta was all over it. Bombshells everywhere. Now here we are 14 days.
Well, I thought there was a weakness right away in the beginning because they indicted him for the weakest charge, that is lying to an FBI agent instead of conspiracy to collude or conspiracy to commit some crime in relation to Russia. Charging somebody with lying to a law enforcement official is usually a signal that they don't have a strong case against the person, and that's obviously what happened here.
And Professor Dershowitz, last question. What signals do you read from the fact that we're now hearing that Special Counsel Mueller has indicated to the Trump team you can give written answers on collusion?
Well, I think that we're seeing a charade where both sides know that the president's not going to sit down and talk, but each side would like to be able to say, I wanted to talk, or I wanted to give him an opportunity to talk, and it's his fault. You know, I hope we'll also mention, just for 1 minute, I know you asked me to talk about the 25th Amendment and my friend, Senator Warren, calling for its invocation. You know, you really have to read the 25th Amendment and understand that it was never intended to medicalize political differences. Even President Obama yesterday used the term paranoia. It's very dangerous when we try to psychiatrize political differences. That's not what the 25th Amendment was about. It was about a president who was shot, or a president who was having a psychotic break and didn't know the difference between right and wrong. It was not intended as a substitute for impeachment, and we ought to get off that as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will really, really undercut the important meaning of the 25th Amendment.
All right, Professor, thank you for helping us separate fact from fiction as well this morning. Good to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The antidote to our problems in this country when it comes to judges and politics is not to deny you a place on the Supreme Court. This is exactly where you need to be. This is exactly the time you need to be there. And I am telling President Trump, you do some things that drive me crazy. You do some great things. You have never done anything better, in my view, than to pick Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, because you had an opportunity to put well-qualified conservatives on the court, men steeped in the rule of law, who will apply analysis, not politics, to their decision-making, and you knocked it out of the park into my friends on the other side. You can't lose the election and pick judges. If you want to pick judges, you better win.
Oh, Obama used to tell us that. Lindsey Graham hammering Senate Democrats for their outrageous behavior at today's hearing. Also breaking tonight, the New York Times reporting Robert Mueller will accept some written answers from the president. Does this mean the investigation is going to come to an end ever? Finally, nearly 500 days. Here to weigh in on all of this is the president's attorney, also the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, who has done legal work for me in the past, and we actually broke bread together. And met and talked once about sports. Good to see you. How are you? Let's start with
you, Sean. Good.
You've argued before the Supreme Court personally, what, 12 times?
Yep.
Yeah, ACLJ 20 times?
Yep.
And you won most of your cases, right?
We've been very fortunate, very blessed in that regard. You don't win them all, but we've won an overwhelming majority. And if you include the others you mentioned, we've had a number of cases that have been summarily reversed. We've had a good track record. But look, I've also won these cases. Some of them we've won unanimously, a number of them unanimously. It depends on the nature of the case. But I got to tell you something. The president has made two fantastic picks. Neil Gorsuch, tremendous judge, now justice. Brett Kavanaugh, who I've known for a long time, is brilliant, has been a great judge. And if you want to know anything about Brett Kavanaugh, read his 312 opinions. That may be a good way to start. So you saw theatrics today in the Senate, but at the end of the day, guess what happens? Judge Kavanaugh becomes Justice Kavanaugh and is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the president gave a great selection with both of these justices. I mean, and reshaping the court literally for decades with a conservative judicial philosophy. Lindsey Graham said elections in that context have consequences. And here the selection of Brett Kavanaugh is, I think, is probably the most qualified
really sad
judge out there for this position.
That the orchestration that went on today, those two young girls that went into the courtroom, that they had to watch their dad go through that process. Nearly said it. I was really careful. All right, let me move on.
But Brett Kavanaugh's opening statement, though, Sean, I thought Brett Kavanaugh's opening statement and what the president tweeted out about what was going on in the Senate kind of summed it all up. Are these senators really going to tangle with Brett Kavanaugh? Because let me tell you who wins that one. Brett Kavanaugh.
Is that? I think it's a fait accompli. It's interesting to watch. Yeah. New York Times headline: Mueller will accept some written answers for Trump. It's been a number of weeks since you and your legal team responded to the special counsel. Some were wondering if there's going to be a fight, whether they would subpoena the president. May still happen. Tell us what you can about what this means. And I know there's only so much you can say.
Yeah, and I've got to be obviously very careful. So let me tell you this. We have an ongoing dialogue with the Office of Special Counsel. Myself and our colleagues have continued an ongoing dialogue. That dialogue continues. I'm not going to discuss the contents of what has been agreed to or not agreed to, but I will tell you this. I'm not concerned about the President of the United States responding if we decide to accept the proposition of responding to written questions, responding to questions about Russia and interference with the election. The president's committed. There's no crime here. There's no underlying crime that the president was involved in. I'm not concerned about where that goes. Look, I mean, if they ask questions and we think they're appropriate, we would respond. Again, we haven't even responded to the special counsel's
but the White House counsel
response to our letter. But it's
the White House counsel spent 30 hours testifying before, which to me is mind-blowing. But it seems to me that if, in fact, Don McGahn gave him 30 hours, and if the president were to go in and say one thing contradictory to what McGahn said, that then sets him up for a perjury trap. And every lawyer...
Well, you're jumping way ahead of the discussion to go to what happens if there was an interview or not an interview. But what you said is very important. This White House has been the most transparent in history when it comes to investigations or inquiries like this. You mentioned Don McGahn's 30 hours of testimony. There's been 30 other witnesses that the White House put forward to testify. There's been over 1.4 million pages of documents that have gone forward. So the idea that the special counsel has not been given access to information, I think they would be readily admit that this has been a transparent investigation and a transparent inquiry. There's all this media spin going on about what was said or what wasn't said, but let me tell you this. The President of the United States authorized his legal team, both his White House counsel and his private lawyers, to engage this in a transparent basis, and that's been done. This does need to come to an end. I mean, I think everybody in the country wants this to come to an end. I don't give dates and times. It needs to happen sooner rather than later. But look, at the end of the day, as I said, it's a process of negotiation. It's ongoing. I'm not going to disclose the nature of that. But there's been a lot of speculation in the media today. I will tell you this much. Look at what has happened so far and what the number of documents and the number of witnesses that have gone forward.
Do we have to worry about what John Dowd has said publicly on this network, or say what we reported about Andrew Weissman and back channel information from Christopher Steele and text messages and communications that show that, in fact, Christopher Steele was trying to funnel information to the special counsel?
Well, look, my former colleague John Dowd denied unequivocally today the reports that came in regarding the excerpts of the book that were released regarding a purported meeting that he had and I had regarding they called it basically a reenactment of a conversation that never took place. And John said that that was not correct, that did not happen. It did not happen. With regard to the other issues you brought up, the irregularities in this inquiry from the outset, including the beginning of it, which is the dossier issue, which starts the whole thing, of course that's an issue. I can give you a whole list. We don't have the time to go through that again. Yeah. But look, all of that's relevant to the nature and the scope of this inquiry and its just resolution. At the end of the day, as I said, I am convinced that we're going to get it there. We're going to end this soon, but I don't give dates. But I will tell you this, I'm not worried about questions on Russia.
Okay, Jay Sekulow, it'll be interesting to see if this becomes, if you will, James Comey 2, weeks before an election. Thanks for being with us.